Hey everybody, welcome to Let's Click. I'm Jason Odell and my Substack is The Photographer's Perspective. So thanks again for tuning in today. I see there's some people already in the chat. Very cool to see you guys over there. I'm waving hi as best I can from another screen. So thank you very much for that. Um, what do we have on tap today? Well, it's just another windy day here in Colorado. So I thought, why not just go live with a show? So um, I want to use this platform to, share little things about photography. Hopefully, have some photographers on to discuss photography in the future. Um, but today, I'm just going to talk about the things that everybody um, gear stuff, but we'll talk about the it's the accessory we love to hate. Um, that is the tripod. And tripods used to be a staple, an absolute necessity for any kind of serious photography. And as cameras have gotten better, uh, you know, uh, we can shoot at high ISO and we have image stabilization. And you might ask yourself, well, why do I even need a tripod anymore? And for a lot of things, you'd be right. You would be absolutely correct. You don't need a tripod for absolutely everything. In fact, when you're traveling, as I'm prone to do, a tripod, quite honestly, can start to feel like a boat anchor carrying it around. Uh, and if there's one thing that I've discovered over the years is that if you're frustrated and carrying a lot of weight around, it can really dampen your creative energy, your creativity. Hey, Eric, good to see you out there. Stacy, Moose, Brittany, good to see everyone out there in the chat. Awesome. Welcome to Let's Click. So, I want to just make the argument first that there are times, absolutely times, when you're going to want to use a tripod. Okay. Um, and what are those scenarios? Okay, let me try to think through a little bit. Well, the first and most obvious one is generally landscape photography. This is where you're going for maximum image quality. You're probably shooting at a time of day where the light might be low, like you're shooting before sunrise or towards the end of sunset, late afternoon. And you want to use your camera's lowest ISO setting, whatever that might be, because that's where you're going to get the most dynamic range, the most quality. It doesn't matter which kind of camera you use, it's just going to be better. And if you're shooting that way, where low ISO is the driving force of your exposure choice, you're going to discover that with low ISOs, and usually you're stopping down to smaller apertures, think f8, f11, f16, maybe more. Well, guess what? Remember your exposure triangle. As the ISO goes down, as the aperture gets smaller, the shutter speed gets slower and slower. And that means shooting handheld can be quite problematic because you'll find yourself in situations where you might need an exposure of 2 or 3 seconds. And while image stabilization systems are good, uh, you're gonna want to use a tripod in those scenarios. So, and I'll just give an example. I threw up a shot yesterday that was from the Badlands National Park in South Dakota. It's where I'm going in September for a group. And hey, you can join the group if you want to come on the photo safari. Contact me for how you can participate in that. It's a really fun thing. But that was a 3 second exposure. I think it was f11. It was before sunrise. So absolutely, I'm on a tripod in that scenario. So the other thing to keep in mind is, you know, how many people in the chat want to spend too much money on a tripod? Probably nobody. So the idea here is nobody wants to spend too much money on a tripod. And there's a surefire way to spend too much money on a tripod, and that's to buy the wrong tripod first, the cheap tripod. And what I mean by that, it's an accessory. Nobody wants to spend a lot of money on accessories. So what do? You go to the camera store and you go, well, here's a tripod. It's 99 bucks. Comes with a tripod head maybe. And then you get out there and use it and you realize that it is absolutely garbage. It's too light. It's too flimsy. It may be constraining. It may be cheap plastic. You can't align and frame up your photo in the right way on the cheap tripod head. And so then you go, well, I guess I need another tripod. And finally, you end up spending, yes, a sizable amount of money on a good tripod, but you would have saved yourself $200 if you had just not bought the cheap one first, right? So let's just keep that in mind. Now, we're not all made of money. I understand that. So, but the good news is that tripods pretty much, if you take care of them, last forever. I've got tripods now that I've been using for, over 15 years in some cases. Some of my older ones I've sold and upgraded. But one good tripod and a good ball head or tripod head will last through any number of camera systems that you may buy over the years. Okay, it just comes down to the uh, the getting the necessary excuse me, attachment accessories. Okay, so what do we want to look for when you're choosing a tripod? I'm going to talk about the tripod features. I'm going to talk about tripod heads, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about some tripod unique tripod either alternatives or variations on tripods. Um, because I'm a photographer, I have more than one tripod. Okay, so let me just start off with the tripod that a tripod, a very typical tripod that you might get. Now this is a fancier one. This is a Gitzo tripod, and the material here is uh, carbon fiber. Okay, you can see that's carbon fiber. The carbon fiber tripod, you don't have to buy one. They cost more. This is true. Uh, but they are very rigid compared to their weight. So their strength to weight ratio is quite high. So you can get a carbon fiber tripod, probably weighs, maybe a pound or two less, depending on the size of the tripod you're talking about. And it will be far more rigid. It will be able to have a higher load capacity than a similarly spec'd aluminum tripod. Aluminum and carbon fiber are pretty much the two major choices you have for tripods these days. Now, back in the day, there were also wooden tripods, really big monster things. Okay, so anyway, check in the chat there. Oh, Alan and Ginger and hey, Daniel and Miss Hughes, good to see you guys out there in the chat. Thanks for tuning in. Appreciate that. So if cost aside, if you're choosing the material, you have the choice between aluminum or carbon fiber. Okay. But both will work just fine. So I'm not telling you got to go out and buy a carbon fiber tripod. So what are the features you really ought to look at? So let me show you on this one. So a couple of features that I think are really important no matter what kind of tripod you end up purchasing or, getting. So the first one is independent leg spread. You'll notice there's no center brace. There's a center column, but there's no brace between the legs and the center column. That is really important, especially if you do nature photography. Now, if you're doing, if you're a videographer, that's a different thing. Okay, a lot of times those tripods will have extra braces to be more stable for the heavy video equipment. But I want a tripod that has independent leg spread, and what that means is I can pop out these little latches here, and I can position the legs all the way up to practically flat, straight out. Okay, so and you can have each leg positioned at a different angle if you so need. And then you'll also see that these have twist locks, which I generally prefer. So these are the leg sections. So another factor in your tripod is how many sections do you get it in? 4 sections, 3 sections. As a general rule, the fewer sections in your tripod, the more stable and rigid it will be, because that's what we're trying to do, is we're trying to set up a rigid platform for your camera. Okay, so this one is a I think it's a 3-section tripod. I can't, I'm in the thing. And when you start getting into tripods with lots of sections, they get the tubes at the end can get really skinny, and that can lead to problems at maximum extension of things not being quite so rigid. So the fewer sections, generally the better. Now, the advantage of one with more sections is that the tripod itself is going to be smaller when you fold it down onto it, so when you collapse it. And that's very important if you're traveling, because I like to put my tripod, typically, I put it into the suitcase. I will, it's the one photographic accessory I just have to check in my luggage 99% of the time. So it needs to be short enough that you can do that. So 4 sections, 3 sections, whatever it might be, and then the length and the size of the tripod. What I try to do for a landscape tripod is find one that is tall enough without any extra column extension, so that I can shoot with it with either no column or the column absolutely flat. Now, with travel tripods, you're generally going to have a bit of a column, and that's this thing, the center column. And I prefer these rapid column styles. So this one, I just have to twist this, collapses. There's ones that have gears and cranks. I used to have one of those. Those were my parents did way back in the day. Okay, so you got a choice of a center column, how much there is, how tall it is, how many sections it is, the material of the tripod. Now, I generally also prefer to buy a tripod without a ball head. Okay, there's no head on this tripod. There's just a 3/8 inch mounting stud. Okay, that means I can put any tripod head onto this tripod that I want, as long as it has a 3/8 inch socket. Okay, and that's most of them. That's pretty much universal these days. There are some ones that have a 1/4 inch real small thread for really teeny tripods, and even then sometimes they have adapters, so you can size them up. So this tripod is sort of a very small, or not very small, but it's a fairly small tripod. I got it back in like 2014. I think I've had this one for that long. It still holds up great, but it has one drawback, and that drawback is this center column. Because it has this center column, if I were to expand this, stretch out these legs all the way to flat, you're going to quickly discover you have a problem. And that is, I can't shoot this at ground level unless I raise the column up all the way. So I can place this on the ground. But if I really want my camera to be low, I've got to find a different solution. So my primary go-to landscape tripod, or nature photography tripod, is one that's a little bit bigger, and I've had this one for a really long time too. And it came, so it's the same idea, same brand. It's also a Gitzo tripod made in Italy. There's a lot of brands out there, and the good news is that I'll give a list of some recommended ones in the show notes when I replay this. But what I did with this tripod is it came with a center column. I removed it. I bought this kit, and this is a base plate that I got. And then it has a little hook down here, so if I want to add a weight to that to stabilize things. And I just straight up removed the center column. So on this one, if I open this all the way and I take that little hook off, I can lay this thing practically flat, and the only extra height is going to be whatever head that I have on the tripod. Okay, so no center column and just a flat top plate is sort of the ideal nature photography tripod, in my opinion. So then you do need to make sure that it's going to be tall enough to suit you, because it's kind of annoying to have to play with the legs all the time to get the right height. So if there's a message here that I'm trying to convey, it's that for outdoor landscape nature photography, you want your tripod to be versatile. So independent leg spread, set it flat if possible. You can adjust the leg length independently, and so you can have your tripod sort of on uneven ground. Happens all the time when you're here, like in Colorado where I'm at, where you're shooting on the side of a mountain or something, side of a hill. Now there are some other types of tripods out there that I've got. Some of them are kind of cute. If you're really into shooting low level stuff, this thing is a little tripod from a company called Leo Photo. Um, they are, I think they're Chinese made or something, but they're pretty good quality. I haven't had an issue with their quality, good carbon fiber stuff, and they're a lot less expensive than some of the other brands. This guy is just tiny. Now, why would I bring this? Well, if I was going to be shooting somewhere where most of the time I was shooting handheld, but maybe I was going to be doing a lot of ground level photography, and I wanted to mount my camera on this, I've got a very short tripod to do that. Again, I can just put any particular ball head or whatever pan head that you want on this. This is called, I don't even know if they make this anymore. It's called the Leo Photo Ranger LS223C. That's what this one is. And you can find them on various places. I think they sell on Amazon, but they also have a shop direct on eBay for the USA buyers. And there's some other little things. This thing is called a Gorilla Pod. It's from a company called Joby, Joby, and its claim to fame is that you can wrap it around things. So you could take your little head on here, you could put your camera on this, and you could wrap this around a fence or something like that. I've done that before. You can use this for all kinds of stuff, but it's kind of clever. And they come in different sizes, different. The larger ones are a little bit sturdier if you've got heavier camera equipment. So speaking of size and camera load, gear weights and stuff, how much should your tripod be able to hold? When you go and shop for a tripod, especially if you're shopping from one of the big online camera stores, for example, like B&H or wherever, Adorama, it's going to show you a load rating, and it's going to say, X number of kilograms / pounds, whatever, the load rating. And essentially, you want to take the weight of your camera, your tripod head, and whatever your largest lens is, and figure if that's, and weigh that all, and that's going to be, your maximum load. As long as your load rating exceeds that, you're good to go. So for a lot of these tripods, depending on your kit, if you get a tripod that's rated at, say, 20 kilograms, 15 to 20 kilograms, you're fine. You're going to be just fine. If you start pushing the upper edge of that load rating, that's where the tripod might start flexing on you, and that could potentially cause stability problems in the field. Like if you're doing sort of longer exposures, it could jiggle. Okay, so what are some other kinds of tripods? Well, here's one that I like as well. Another Gitso carbon fiber, but this is a traveler tripod, and the reason what makes it unique is that it folds up onto itself. So to deploy it, you flip the legs all the way around 180 degrees and then just lower the center column, and you've got your tripod. So what that means then is when you go to pack this, and it's very light, this thing doesn't weigh much at all. I can't remember what the weight rating is on it, but it folds down to a more compact size for traveling with or carrying. You can strap it to your camera bag or something like that. So I like this one for that reason. And then I put a little teeny tripod head on there. So this one, I'm willing to live with the fact that it has a center column, just because when I'm doing a travel or tour, for example, when I'm going to be in Spain in March, most of the time I won't need a tripod, but when I do have one, it'll just be a little thing like this, so that if we go out say at twilight or past sunset or do some night shooting, I've got a small, lightweight tripod to bring with me. Okay, so now let's move on and talk a little bit about tripod heads. Now, once upon a time, when I was first starting out in this, taking pictures, borrowing my parents' equipment, this had been in the early 80s, a tripod meant something very heavy with a three-way pan tilt head. Now, I don't have one of those anymore. I did own one. They tend to be less expensive. But around the late 90s, I got turned on to early 2000, I got turned on to the concept of a ball head. And a ball head is my favorite. Let me get one down here. This is a beast of a ball head, and I don't have a clamp on it right now. This is a Really Right Stuff BH55. This is the mother of all tripod ball heads. And you can see it's got this ball in here and a couple of drop notches. And on the top is where I would attach a mounting plate, a specialized plate in which you can either screw on or clamp on to your camera. It has adjustable drag settings, and it has a panning base, so I can pan and turn and then set it. And then what's nice about these is once you set it, you turn the lock knob, and then this thing just gets locked down, and it is really strong. They're not gonna, as long as it's set up right, they're not going to droop on you or sag when you're shooting. So these ball heads are excellent. Now, once upon a time, there weren't very many manufacturers of ball heads. There was the leader in the original one was a company called Arca Swiss. I think they're still around. And then some other companies started copying that design or making variations of them. And the two that were most prominent are Really Right Stuff. That's what this one is. They make tripods too. That's Really Right Stuff. Hopefully you can see that. And then another brand that I've used in the past is Kirk Photo, KIRK. They make good ball heads as well as accessories. And then lately I've also purchased some of these Leo Photo ball heads, which are kind of knockoffs of the Really Right Stuff. I'll be honest with you. They are pretty darn good though. I've used them I took one to Iceland and it was fine. And so you got a lot of different choices of size. And again, they're going to have load ratings and they're going to contribute weight. So you can get some of these are medium-sized ones. And then you can even go and get some of these things that are tiny. So this is like my ultimate tiny travel ball head. I can put it on that little Gitzo that I showed you. It's got one knob and one knob only. And when you release that knob, it pans and it rotates and it unlocks the ball. So you just got to lock that back down. But when you're not doing a lot of hardcore, landscape photography, you just need something to hold your camera steady. This is perfect. Okay, so this is a Really Right Stuff. Forget what model this one is, but it's like a BH 15 or 20 or something. I can't remember, but it's tiny. Other kinds of things you can get for your camera. I'll go into those in a second. I want to talk briefly though about the clamp. Okay, so I mentioned the Arca Swiss ball head. They were one of the pioneers on ball heads. They also developed a unique attachment system that uses a clamp. Let's see if you can see that. Yeah, there you go. And these clamps can either be lever release or screw release. They just screw in. I don't know if I have a screw-in one lying around. I guess not. But the key with these is that it's just a dovetail clamp. And so in order to mount it to your camera, instead of screwing the tripod thread like the classic tripod heads would have a little screw on the top, right? And you screw that into your camera. Well, what happens? Well, first of all, it's a pain. Second, because you got to screw that in. Second of all, they tend to untwist. And the whole thing is less reliable. So what Arca-Swiss did was they came up with this system that uses these clamps and these little dovetail plates. Okay, so this plate has the little dovetail carved into it. And what that means is that the plate, if you do it right, it fits in to this jaws of the clamp, and then you clamp it down, and that thing's not going anywhere. Okay, now this does screw into your camera. Okay, so there is a little mounting thread, a 1/4-inch thread that will screw into your camera. Now, depending on how fancy you want to get, you can get just a simple plate, which is still not going to eliminate the twist problem. You can get fancier ones that are machined to match your camera as a base plate. So, for example, I've got this thing here. I'll pull this out. This is a base plate for my OM3 camera, and it comes with a little grip because the OM3 doesn't have a grip. It has the dovetail, and I've removed, there's a little plate that I can attach to the side if I want to mount it this way. But the point is, when that thing is attached to the base of the camera, it's machined in. So this is aluminum machining, and it doesn't twist. So when that's on my tripod, as long as I've locked down the clamp properly, this isn't going anywhere. Okay? And then my other accessory that I will sometimes use, and I've got one up here somewhere. Here we go. This is an L bracket. And I've written about these, I've talked about these in the past. You don't need to buy one, but they are coming down in price if you get them from third-party manufacturers. So this is a Leo Photo one. But when I was buying these L brackets from Really Right Stuff or Kirk Photo, a lot of times they'd be like $150, $160. And that's a lot of money for just a camera accessory. But this has a little lip on it. So this is going to screw on to the bottom of my camera. It's going to be absolutely twist-proof. And then it has the side, so if I unlatch the camera from the tripod, I can turn it on its end. Now, why is that important? Well, it may or may not be important to you, but it's important to me. Because if I shoot the traditional way, let me just start over. Let me put this in here the normal way. The normal way you would shoot would be your camera's in portrait orientation, right? You're taking your picture and you're on the tripod and you say, well, I want to shoot a vertical or a portrait orientation. What do? Well, you have to turn this thing and you flop it to the side. Now you've got your camera hanging off the tripod. It may or may not be at a 90-degree angle, perpendicular to ground. You've got no ability now to do any kind of composition adjustments other than pan it or pitch it up and down. So what the L bracket does, and these are cool, and this is why I spend money on them, is because when you put it in the alternate, the portrait orientation, so now the camera's pointing up this way, I have the camera on the tripod axis, and I can move this however I'd like using the ball head as it was intended. So if you're serious about landscape photography, nature photography, and you're going to be using a tripod, consider an L bracket. They're very good, and like I said, you can get them from a variety of manufacturers, and they will be specific to your camera model. So they machine them to fit the bottom of a particular type of camera. All right. A few more things I wanted to just talk about real briefly. Some other accessories. Okay. Let's see. So what are some other fun accessories? Oh, well, sometimes in the past I've used a monopod. And when I've used a monopod, you can get a monopod head. So this is just a tilt head. Okay. And it's got a tension knob. You tighten that on the side and it locks down. And this one has that screw clamp that I was mentioning. So if you've got a long lens on a monopod, now if you use a monopod, most people who use monopods are sports photographers because they're just shooting at one level, and they'll just put their camera. Usually it's the lens foot because the big lens. You see these guys on the sidelines of sporting events. They'll have their monopod and they're kneeling down, and they'll use that to support because it's a lot more nimble than trying to deal with a tripod on the sideline of a football match. So um, for them, they're shooting everything pretty much at eye level. But if you're shooting nature subjects, it's more likely that you're going to have to point up and down. Now, you can do that with the monopod to an extent, but you can get a little bit better agility by mounting your lens or camera onto the top of this plate and then just adjusting the angle based on whatever your position is. So that's a thing. Uh, I definitely prefer using a monopod with some kind of tilt head on it. Another thing that I've got, let's see. So this thing is called a Wimberley Sidekick. It's from the company called Wimberley. And it's a gimbal attachment. They make a full gimbal head. I used to have one. I don't have it anymore. I don't have a lens that really needs it. But the way this thing works, this is for big lenses like 300, 400, 500 millimeter lenses. And the way you use the Sidekick is it mounts into your clamp. So this is another Arca Swiss toy. And then you put the tripod head, you put the clamp in the drop down. So you still have your panning base, and now your lens attaches up here. Now, why would you do that? Because now there's a pivot on this. So this gives you a gimbal. So your up down is controlled by this tension knob. You've got a big lens on there. And if you want to pan, you've got the panning knob down here, and you just use it on the tripod. So I've used those all the time. If you've got a huge lens, like I'm thinking 600 f4, 400 2.8, those big lenses, in that respect, the full Wimberley gimbal head is a slightly better option for if you've got a dedicated rig for a really big super telephoto lens, because with that you can adjust the height of the lens. You can have it dialed in so it's literally balanced, completely balanced, and you can just move it however you want. It's really, really elegant to use. I don't have a lens that large anymore that really requires that, so I don't have that anymore. And then a few little cute things too. This, I think they still sell these. This is a thing from a company called Me Photo. I can't remember if they're still them or if they got bought by somebody else, but this is called, what is this one? I don't even remember the name of this. This is a clamp and an Arca Swiss plate for your phone. So you can put your phone into this clamp, and then you can mount this to a ball head with an Arca Swiss plate, or you can just screw it on to the bottom of a tripod. It's got holes in there too with threads, so that's kind of fun. And then one last thing, I mentioned my low tripod there, the small one, but what about situations where you're going to be shooting at ground level on the sand? Like I'm thinking like on the beach for shorebirds, right? That's where you want to get really low. Yeah, standing up is the fun part. That's the after you're done. But this little thing, like this frisbee, okay, is called the skimmer, and I got it at B&H. Yes, it's just a plastic thing, but it's a very rigid plastic thing, and it's got a 3/8 inch stud, so you can attach your tripod head to it. I can even then choose to attach my Sidekick to it if I wanted to. And then you've got a low-level ground pod that is designed to float, not on the water, on the sand, to skim across the sand. So if you're going to do low level shore birds, this might be something to consider. And then you just put on whatever particular ball head that you want. And what I like to do when I'm shooting that low is that's when I like to flip out the LCD on the camera and just use live view so that I don't have to lie on my stomach in the sand on the beach. So um, that's, I think, pretty much everything I can think about for tripods 101, if you will. So just to recap, you can spend a lot of money on tripods. Get a good tripod first. I know it might be a little bit painful in terms of the price, but there are some inexpensive options, even in the carbon fiber from different brands out there. So you don't want to get a cheapo tripod, but you definitely don't need to spend $1,000 on a tripod, although you can. I but that's a different story. Get a tripod, choose between aluminum, carbon fiber, make sure it's got independent leg spread. Consider one with either a short or removable center column if you want to do low level shooting. Consider getting a ball head instead of a pan tilt head. And if you get one that has an Arca Swiss type clamp, then all you need is a mounting plate for your camera body and your lens. And some of my lenses now from OM System actually include the foot on the lens is already got a dovetail in it, which is absolutely cool. It's a smart thing on their part. So I don't even need to get a plate for that lens. I can just put the foot right in the clamp and clamp it down. So that is, I think, the show for today. I will be doing these hopefully more regularly as I get better with this. Thanks again for attending. Drop a few. And if you haven't subscribed already, I would appreciate the subscription. It does. I don't know what it does, but it gets you in. It gets me in your inbox if nothing else. I posted an article yesterday, and I got a lot of good comments on it about using a different kind of contrast adjustment in Lightroom, and it's out there. It's free. So thanks again, everybody, for joining. Until next time, I'm Jason Odell from the photographer's perspective. And thanks once again, and happy shooting out there. See ya.